It's, what do you connect to? What do you want to see change? Everybody has a gift, I believe, to make a change in the world. No matter how small it may feel to you, that will change. It's a ripple effect.
Welcome to the Shine Strategy Podcast, where entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business owners are getting visible and changing the world. I'm your host, Heather Burgett, an award-winning publicist, entrepreneur, and business mentor. Today's show is sponsored by PR Stars. For more inspiration and Shine strategies, head over to shineinsiders.com now for my free masterclass so that you too can get visible and go from local to global. Hey Shine Insiders, it's time for shout outs, and I love this part of the show because it's where we get to shine the spotlight on you. And the fact that I'm hearing that it's fueling your souls, this show, that's fueling my soul. And I really appreciate you listening, taking the time to rate and review the show. So let's start out with one here by Just Nalu. She says, true source of light, love, and transformation, 5 stars. Heather is a radiant woman who is clearly on a mission to bring light, love, and transformation to our planet and inspire others to do the same. Her interview with Marianne Williamson is deeply inspiring for what is possible if we all rise up and take a stand for the change we wish to see in the world. Thanks, Heather, for being a conduit of magic and miracles. Your work is definitely needed and appreciated. XO. Thank you, Jess, and right back at you. I mean, I know a lot of my listeners are out there doing really incredible things on the planet as well. So thank you so much. This is a very humbling review, but exciting at the same time because this is what I wanted to create, was a space for this kind of transformation. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's hear one here from Diane Collins. Heather's interviews illuminate and people get real. 5 stars. Heather evokes such authenticity in her conversations with an energy and expansiveness that has her guests get real and in such an interesting, alluring way. It seems Heather has found her own next place to shine and to scatter that light so we all experience being included. Yes, we are spreading and scattering and sharing in this light. And wow, that is really humbling as well and beautiful. And thank you, Diane. You guys, this is like not my wheelhouse. Doing this is not comfortable for me. I'm stretching my own boundaries and stepping into the spotlight myself in doing this program. So to know that it's affecting people in the way that it is, that makes me feel better. It helps me keep going and knowing that we're on track here and that I'm deeply moving forward in my purpose, and that feels really good. So thank you for listening and dropping these reviews, and keep them coming. It's so appreciated. You don't even know. And today we have a really amazing episode that starts out with some really harsh truths, and I know it might be hard to hear some of it, but hang in there. Please stick throughout the whole episode to hear what happens. And about halfway through, we start really going more into a transformational space with our guest. And I think it's going to give you some real insight and inspiration that might be very unexpected. So with all that being said, let's dig in. We have an incredible guest today, someone that I am so proud to call a friend. And Deborah and I have known each other, I think it's now over a decade. And Deborah is someone that has just constantly impressed me, and I think many others in the world, at her creative spirit and her ability to take a really challenging topic or subject and put it out into the world in a way that no one else has ever done before. And we first met on one of her first projects, which was an album, Silence. She's a singer. One of her first coffee table books called Paper Thin, and we did a PR push around that for her. And this is all disclaimers too on how we know each other. We've definitely worked together. And then on to the incredible Room 23, which featured over 100 celebrities in a Beverly Hills penthouse suite. And that was all to raise awareness for a human rights organization. On to the Arouse Project, which featured some of the top female adult stars, which was also a coffee table book and a documentary. And that was on Showtime not too long ago. Now she's working on an even more incredible project. I think maybe everything is culminating into this project from her life, and I want to hear her explain that to all of you. Yeah, I mean, just someone that you really want to keep an eye on, an incredible multimedia artist with a huge voice, has done incredible work through her photography, her directing, film, all these different mediums, her own voice singing, daughter of a rock star, by the way, also having had a top hit when she started out early in her career singing. So with all of that said, I'm going to introduce Deborah Anderson to you. Hello, Deborah.
Hello, Heather. It's so funny when you're talking through what I've done. I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that. I've done all that. And it's really interesting how, as an artist, you sort of flow from one experience to another. And like you said, it is definitely the bridge to where I'm at right now, with this incredible opportunity to be able to tell the stories of some of the indigenous peoples on this planet. And if someone had said to me 2 years ago, you'll end up going to Pine Ridge Reservation, the poorest reservation in America, and you'll sit with some of the elders, some of the Lakota Nation elders, and speak about their life, their history, and their understanding as Native people still living here in America today, I would have said, there's no way. Because it just felt so far away from the past experiences of working with rock stars and pop stars and sort of celebrated people in a very different world, very different universe to those that we have forgotten. So I'm blessed and grateful for the journey that's gotten me here. You know, for me, really, it goes down to the human experience. You know, the things that we choose and why we choose them. And as a filmmaker, as a photographer, capturing the essence of what that looks like. And then now here I am finishing, I think I have like a week to go on this feature documentary called Women of the White Buffalo. And I feel like it's kind of full circle in a way. It's coming back to who I really am, to my roots, to my indigenous roots, I guess would be the best way to put it. Because I never cared, actually. I think I was so on the outside. Everything was the outside of me. And now it's very much coming inwards and trying to look at my footprint and what I'm doing as an artist and what does my voice really have to say.
Oh my gosh. And I have to point this out to you, and maybe you already have noticed this, but when I was looking at one of your images, it's called Silence No More. And we met on one of your first projects over a decade ago called Silence. So I thought, oh my gosh, she went from silence to silence no more.
Yeah. That is so funny. It's so true. It's so true. I know. That's so funny. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, the latest, or the latter of that, Silence No More, is the image of a Native American Lakota woman with a red handprint. And we printed up some posters for the Native March in Washington that took place just over a month ago. And the Washington Post picked up that image, and it was the cover of their story. I changed the red handprint into an upside down American flag. And those that don't know, the upside down American flag means distress. And it's something that you would hang if you were in need of help. And to me, the lessons that I've learned through documenting the stories of these women is very much that they are in dire need of help.
Oh my God, that just gave me chills.
Yeah. It's nuts. I mean, not all nations are as bad as the Lakota. However, they are the second largest nation in America. And they do live in the poorest county. And I think the bigger story for me is nobody should be living the way that they live. Nobody should have to survive off of a government that doesn't give them their strength and their humility and honor them the way that they deserve to be honored. It's been a very challenging journey for me.
And you lived with them on the reservation, right?
Yes.
Was it 3 months or a while?
I originally, in order to go to Pine Ridge, in order to really step into any of these nations, you have to be invited. And it came to me in 2017, December. I had spoken with somebody. I was planning to do a Leica show in May of last year, 2018, down in Beverly Hills. They called me and asked if I would show some work. I knew I wanted to do a new body of work. And I ended up speaking with someone who was actually cleaning my camera at this repair store down in Palm Springs. And he started telling me about a woman that had gone to the reservation and was shooting these wild mustangs and these buffalo. And immediately I was like, oh my God, native understanding. And it was like a flood of excitement. I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to go and shoot these native peoples, and that would be my exhibit. I had no idea what was happening. And I got home, I Googled Native American Indian woman. And what came back was truly horrifying, Heather. I felt like I'd been in the dark. These are not stories that you are taught at school. In fact, they don't teach any of the true history in the curriculums, in the schooling system in America and really globally. So I really didn't have any clue that there was an epidemic of murdered and missing Indigenous women, that children were addicted to meth, that these kids were going through really hell. And their suppression, oppression, depression of the peoples over 530 years of the genocide that took place in this country, these people have started to kill one another, in their spiritual lack, in their language being obliterated. They have no, I think 10 years ago, I believe there were 20,000 people that spoke the Lakota language. And today there's only 2,000 people that speak the Lakota language. So wow. Just learning that, just literally from Googling. So it's not like the information isn't available to us.
Right.
We just don't care. We don't know. It's not in our vision. It's not in front of us.
And that's why it's so important that you are raising your voice and using your talents, your special skills and creative gifts to put this message and movement out into the world. And we've talked about, there was that American Frontiersman show not too long ago on History Channel, I think produced by Leonardo DiCaprio, which showed a history unlike we were given as kids growing up in school, and showing how truly this was a genocide. And it's so sad. And it's like, I think we all know this, as American citizens, we know and understand how the country was founded, but I don't know if people truly get it or truly, like you're saying, care about what's happening now. So tell a little bit more about the reservation. I think there was one note that I read that said something like 19 people during the time you were on there, something happened to.
Yeah, they died. It's the energy on the reservation is something that's very difficult to describe, I have to say. There is definitely a depression just energetically throughout the reservation because of the way these people are living. I'm not going to lie. I had this fantasy of sort of more like maybe a romanticized idea of what I thought a native's life looked like today. And I'm going to say it, I was expecting teepees and, that whole sort of
ceremonies and...
Yeah, well, just the way that we imagined it to be because of the propaganda films that were made back in the early part of the century of, in sort of 1920s, 1910. They had a plan to kill off the native peoples. And so they said, well, we better get them on film. We better, get them so that they're remembered. And the natives had another plan. They were like, well, actually, no, that's not exactly how it's going down. But there was a bigger agenda to be rid of these people. And I think the big thing that I got when I was there was that they totally remember who they are. They, behind the veil of the way they live, the lack of support that they have financially, I think over 90% of the reservation are unemployed. The numbers are kind of staggering, to be honest. 150%, the suicide rates are higher, 150% higher than the national average in America. The alcoholism, the meth addiction, these things that we do have a problem in America with all of these things. However, these peoples never had any of this in their lives before the European settlers came. The native people didn't drink alcohol. And I think this overwhelming sense of this is my country by the Americans, who to me are really the European settlers, they've forgotten that this was never their land.
It's just such a travesty. It's so sad. And really, 19 people in 3 months. And I think it says here that they either died of suicide, murder, car crash involving alcohol, or went missing. I mean, imagine if any of us in any of our daily lives knew of 19 people that we were personally connected to somehow that happened to within a 3-month period. I mean, how could your human spirit even endure that? I mean, they must be just in such a state of, I don't know, is it just sort of a sad and desolate energy there? Like, tell us more about that.
Definitely, it definitely held it's like a blanket of sorrow. It really feels like that. And these people are funny. They have such a funny sense of humor. They love to laugh. They love to celebrate. They have such a rich culture. And I was witness to all of that. However, the overshadow is having to go to another funeral, to have to bury another sister, another daughter, another child. The fact that it's in America, the fact that this is just hours away from where I live. Funnily enough, I actually live next to 2 reservations. See, as soon as I started to, have these doors open, these my eyes open to all of this, we're surrounded by the native energy. There are reservations all over America. But just to understand what these reservations even are, the ground zero, I believe, of all reservations is Pine Ridge. Obviously, there's been a lot of press related to them. If we remember back in 1973, Marlon Brando won an Academy Award for his performance in one of his films, and he sent up a native woman.
Yes, Sasheen.
And she spoke of the standoff at that time in Wounded Knee. And people in the audience booed her, because I've watched that footage, and it's like the ignorance and the arrogance. And maybe, you go, well, the Oscars aren't a stage for political.
And she refused the Oscar making that statement about it. And yeah, I mean, it was such an opportunity to raise awareness, and people still to this day remember this. And actually, there's a film about Sasheen screening in the Beverly Hills Film Festival coming up. So yeah, I think she's going to be coming down here for that. So it's such an honor to actually, be able to be part of that, helping promote awareness to that project as well.
The timing is now, I think, Heather. I think what's come up here is, like you mentioned all the other, really incredible journey that I've been on as an artist creator. And it has definitely come to this place where I now have these connections to amazing people, whether they're celebrated people or they're just people that have followed me and collected my work or whatever it may be. And everybody has been so interested in this project that I know that all of that work that I did and all that energy and effort I put in to all this other work and sort of, raising my name in the game and such has allowed for this to get, I guess, a platform that more people would take a look at. It's like I've worked so hard to now for this.
You have. And I'd love to talk about that, because that is really what we're using this platform is to inspire people with others' stories, and also help them understand and see how when you do make yourself more visible in the world, shining your gifts into the world, that's when the people you're meant to serve can find you. Now, didn't Leica come to you? Isn't they knew about you? And
a year ago, December, I did a short film with Eve Ensler for her 1 Billion Rising organization. And she does such incredible work, such tremendous fighting for women's rights, fighting for the women's voice in the world global. Like she travels to all cultures, all religions, and has such an impact in these communities, healing women. She has a film out right now that's on Netflix called City of Joy, about the women in the Congo. And there's a lot of similarities, with the women in the Congo who are being raped and murdered by the men who are manning the man camps. And the man camps are these camps that are set up all over the Congo where they are drilling for natural resources, not unlike the man camps that have been built in America, on the reservations, on land that does not belong to America, USA. And they build these pipelines. And these man camps do exactly the same thing. They have 100 men, 200 men that are working to build these illegal pipes in America. And the men get bored. They're also probably on meth. They're working crazy hours. And they infiltrate the little towns on these reservations. And they steal these women. They murder these women. And they sex traffic these women.
I think, was it Wind River? There was a movie I remember seeing that addressed this and showed the rape of a Native American woman, I think rape and maybe murder too. I mean, it's just.
She died in the snow running away from the camp after they had beaten and raped her. Well, I mean, I guess the correlation I'm making here is that it is a worldwide issue, and Eve Ensler has a healing center in the Congo for these women. Their stories, they're very hard to hear. It's very, the human journey. Sometimes I listen to these stories, and I had to listen to a lot of stories on the reservation. Very, very hard to hear how we treat one another, how we have really lost that innate sense of community and oneness.
Let's talk a little bit about the white buffalo woman, because what she represents, she was sort of what would you call her?
Like a deity. She was kind of a deity in a lot of there are over nearly 800 tribes in America. There's 563 tribes that are recognized. There are over 200 tribes that are still waiting to be recognized. And I can imagine there's probably several others that don't care. They're there and they're not trying to be recognized. They probably live a sort of more unique experience where they don't want to be of the world, because there are still tribes on this planet that have not been perpetrated. So you can imagine they all have their own language, understanding, ceremony, but they all believe that we are all one. They speak of the four-legged ones, they speak of the winged ones, and prayer and ceremony being their connection to the earth. So the white buffalo calf woman, I learnt of this story when I went to South Dakota to meet with my first elder, Carol Einrope. And she told me she does a radio show on Keeley Radio in South Dakota. And she always opens her radio show with a prayer. And everything we did when we arrived in South Dakota, we started with a prayer. My film, Women of the White Buffalo, it starts with a prayer, and it's spoken by Carol Einrope, and she starts in Lakota, and then we move into it being in English. I didn't want to have subtitles in the film. I wanted you to sort of be able to hear some of the language and just be in that frequency, because the language is very, very powerful. So I get there, and she basically tells me, the Woman of the White Buffalo calf woman. Of course, my film is Women of the White Buffalo, and I'll let you know why that landed that as that being the title. But she basically was this woman that showed up to the nation of Buffalo, Lakota tribe, and they had no buffalo. They were hunting, and the village was suffering. And she came with the peace pipe. She came with the chanupa and told them that she was going to gift them their ceremonies and understanding and wisdom so they could thrive as a nation. There were two hunters, and one man looked at her, and she was beautiful. She was covered in white buckskin. And the one man saw her as the divinity of the feminine, the deity that she was. And the other man had impure thoughts. And she saw this, and she felt the vibration of the impure thoughts, and she called him toward her. And he walked toward her, and she turned him into a cloud of smoke, whilst the other warrior was watching. And as the smoke disappeared, what was left were his bones on the floor and snakes, a ball of snakes in his stomach area of the rib cage. And she said to the other warrior, I want you to go down to your village and tell them what you just saw, and tell them to prepare a place for me, as I'm going to come and teach you the healing ways and hunting ways and thriving ways of your peoples. So he did just that, and she went down to the village singing a song, and it continues. And throughout my film, I talk a lot about it, because she talks about how man will always have two minds, whether you take the high road or the low road type thing. And I speak about it in detail, because throughout the film, we're gifted this understanding, that when we make the wrong choices with the circumstances of what happens. And so they're just very, all the stories, the native peoples never wrote anything down. It was all oral tradition. So all these stories are so powerful about the ways to find integrity, honor, humility, compassion, and love for one another, just through the telling of these amazing, wise stories that were passed down from the elders. And all of this, if you look at our society now, most of the kids are stuck on Instagram doing selfies, on Facebook trying to post their favorite moment of the day, trying to outdo each other with what they have. And so that innate sense of who they are has completely been lost. And so we've learnt to disconnect. And we think we're so connected with our telephones and our cell phone, all our social media and such. And I know it's a great tool to get our work out there. And I will say it's actually helped this film passage because we have a Women of the White Buffalo Facebook page and an Instagram page. And we've been reaching 140,000 people. We get 4,000 or 5,000 shares. And all the information that we're putting out are stories about the nations, what's happening on the reservations, the women that are going missing. So it's kind of like a news feed.
Right.
And we're getting a lot of Native people jumping on board and supporting it, which is fantastic. But we really, I think the end of all of this is that we've forgotten who we are. These Native people who are the wisdom, the connection, the medicine, the real earth people, the ones that kept everything in balance, have been killed off through the genocide, through the new genocide they speak of is just putting these people in jail. Like any way to get them to have the slow death, which was always the agenda. And in turn, if we look at how we murder and we rape these women, we are murdering and raping Mother Earth. And it's such a correlation. If we lose these indigenous peoples, I'm telling you, this planet will not survive.
Something you had said that I saw in my notes here was that you saw the reservations as sort of these like prisoner of war camps, that they're actually terrible.
You know what's so interesting? I found out that Hitler based his design for his concentration camps on the designs and a lot of the way that they would do these mass burials when they would basically go in and infiltrate and kill off all these peoples. Hitler copied what was already happening here in America. Ugh. So there's photos of the Wounded Knee Massacre, which was over 130 years ago, when they went in. There was a band of, it's like a caravan of Lakota people walking from, they were being basically moved from one bit of land to the next, and they would have to walk for weeks, and thousands would die.
The death marches.
Yeah, they were death marches, Trail of Tears. I mean, there's many, many different historical moments, again, that have been swept under the carpet. But they would, they were moving them from one area to another. And one of the Native men had a rifle, and he was told to put his rifle down. And, I think you just get to that point where you're like, just no, enough. And so the Americans at this point, the cavalry, shot them. And they just aimed at the children. There was like 80 children and mothers that were shot. 300 people were massacred. And Ugh. They put them in a mass grave. And there are photos. There's a photo in my film of that. And then I saw a photo of the same exact mass grave that Hitler had created for his camps. So, yes, they are.
And that's just, because I think as Americans, we like to think we're the good guys and we're, this holier than thou sort of attitude in the world. And, the truth is we have some things in our history that we, should not be proud of, and that there is something that needs to be said for all of the things that have happened. And it's just so amazing that you're able to capture these oral traditions of these stories. And like when you were talking about the White Buffalo Woman, I was completely transfixed.
Yeah.
And just hearing, about the powerful energy that she encompasses. And wow, it just really feels like, especially in what's happening in our world now, that it is like, maybe it's the time of the White Buffalo Woman. Like she's here to...
the ending of that prophecy with her coming down, her prophecy was that when you see the white buffalo calf, it means I have returned and there will be peace on earth. And many believe that that has happened. And as I saw it, as I was trying to sort of, what's the name of this film, name my film, Women of the White Buffalo felt to be so perfect. Those women who are standing up and making a difference and spreading their love and compassion and power and remembering who they are the women of the White Buffalo. And so the time is now, Heather. I feel like I've been prepared for this for many, many years. I've always been spiritual. I've always connected to spirit. My father, he's a musician. He's always spoke and sang about planet Earth, Divine Mother, the consciousness that is more than what we see. I guess he's been my greatest teacher. You know, he took me down this road. So it was always there. So when I was doing all this other work outside of where I'm at now, I always heard a voice that would be like, this is not it, but you're getting there. You know, it was almost like I was being prepared for this, because my dad used to come home when I was 19, 20, and he'd bring indigenous people, native peoples to our home, and he did music and albums with them. And funnily enough, he did do a song about the white buffalo calf woman about 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah. So it's been part of my consciousness.
Part of your destiny here.
Yeah, definitely. And now I have, I speak with the peoples at least every other day. I'm in some communication with my relatives that live in Pine Ridge, and I'm doing my best to support and help in the smallest of ways, because, right now they have the floodings that are happening in South Dakota, and they're calling it a state of emergency, and I don't know how much help they're really getting. But it's horrific. Families are dying. There's, the mold in the houses. They're living it's just crazy, Heather. They live in trailers, and there's sometimes 10, 12 people living in a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom trailer, and they have no electricity, they have no heat. And these are people that thrived. They lived in teepees. Not all native nations lived in teepees. The Lakotas were more nomads, so they moved more, depending on the season. So their whole lives got ripped apart. And I feel like this film, Women of the White Buffalo, will wake people up to seeing what they don't want to see, to that which they don't know about because they're just in ignorance and just never were told. And I think it's really going to want people to do something. And even if it's not to do something for these people specific, I think it'll wake people up to look at their own lives and ask why they have so much stuff in it. And I mean stuff meaning, not just stuff in their houses, but just the complications of the relationships they have in their lives. Just, the work that they're doing that they're not even really happy with, and just the choices that they're making. We're so outside of ourselves. We have to come back to that deeper connection.
And I'm so happy you're saying all of these things, because starting this podcast is something very new for me, and I saw it as an opportunity. And originally I was going to focus on business strategies for, public relations and visibility. And then I realized our world is in such a state of peril right now, and there are so many bigger things happening in the world that are so important. And I tend to work with people that are having really powerful messages or movements, getting them out into the world to awaken people and raise consciousness. And I thought, what if I could use this podcast as a platform to give those people a voice? You're giving the voice to the Native Americans and the women. And then it's up to all of us now, myself, the people that are listening, to not just forget what they're hearing today, to turn around and instead of going and posting your lunch on your Instagram, maybe do a really thoughtful post around what's happening in the world. And just looking at the numbers too, I mean, I know we're, really hammering this home, but I think it's globally 20.9 million, mostly women and children, are sex trafficked in an industry that's estimated at $99 billion annually. That's a statistic from equalitynow.org. Apparently, there is no data on the trafficking of Native women. So, that makes them even more vulnerable. So this is not just something happening in one community. As you mentioned, Deborah, it's in the Congo. It's all over. And it's something that's been happening for a long, long time. And what is important to people now? That's the real question. We have, whether you believe in climate change or not, our world has a lot of crazy things happening in it, from environment to politics to all of these things we're talking about today. So it's where are people going to use their voices? You obviously are going to establish a legacy of giving voices to underserved people. So, I mean, let's talk about that for a second. What do you feel, you are creating in terms of a legacy, or what is the vision that you have for what you'd like to leave behind on this planet?
It's such a good question, because when you mention all those different things, the perils of being on this planet, it can be very overwhelming. We sit there and we're just oh my God, it's just too much. And so therefore you jump back in your cave, Right. And it's just easier to just be I'll just post my lunch. Let's just keep it simple.
Keep Keep it simple.
Do you know what I mean? And you have to have some sense of humor somewhere in all of this, because otherwise it can lead you to absolute madness. I read something the other. Well, let's start with this. As soon as I sort of launched into this subject matter, it was very clear it was a calling, and I was gifted through my friends and through those that I've kept close around me on my journey in my sort of spirit awakening, let's say. I have this incredible medicine woman called Kate who basically prepared me for this journey. A couple of years back, we started working in meditation with native energy. And it just so random because I had no idea that I would end up on this, but she knew. She'd already said, she saw it very clearly, how my work would touch millions of people. And you sit there and, of course if you haven't done the work, the ego jumps in. Oh, I'm going to do these amazing things for these people. It is so not that. You move out of your self-desire for what is going to, let's say, what will I be remembered for, any of those things. You move out of that ego and it just becomes of service. And you realize that being in the service, that you're rewarded in such huge amounts of love and guidance and compassion and protection and insight and wisdom from others, that you are richer than you could ever imagine. Just like, oh my gosh, this journey that I've been, I guess, gifted, is really the way I look at it, is life-changing.
I would love to break down a little bit, because I think there's something really important that you brought up about, and we kind of were talking and joking about posting your lunch on Instagram instead of doing something a little more deep or meaningful, or it can be crippling when you start to think, I struggle with this all the time, like what's going on in the world. But I love what Marianne Williamson said, who's actually running for president now. I'm so excited about that. Just powerful, powerful woman. And I saw her speak at the Saban Theater one time, and she said, now is not a time to bury your head in the sands. And that's from someone who's very spiritual and all about, Course in Miracles and meditation and higher consciousness and vibration and all of these things. I know a lot of people that are spiritual or consider themselves to be awakened or working on these parts of their life. And they just say, well, I don't want to feed into this other energy of what's happening in the world because that lowers my vibration. But it's actually the opposite. It's actually like, this is not a time to ignore what's happening. If you are a spiritual person and awakened, this is the time to actually help raise the vibration of the planet and get involved and use your superpowers and your incredible gifts and talents and energies to help change the world and make it a better place. So, while it might be crippling sometimes when you think of what's happening in the world, you've got to get over that, and you have to just step up and get involved and use your voice and take action and get out there. And I love that this is exactly what you're doing. And I think there are a lot of people listening that probably have a message or movement that they really do want to get out into the world, or things they do want to, put into the planet to help create a better place. So can you give some advice in terms of, maybe some of the challenges you've had, how you've overcome them, like things that they can do to really reach their goals and get themselves out there?
Absolutely. You know what I love so much about that and hearing that is that I think everybody has a soft spot for something. It can be anything that makes you feel like you do good in the world if you support it, donate to it, speak about it, speak to it, support it in some way. And I think that's the root of all healing, is to really be authentic about what it is that you're speaking on behalf of, or supporting, or raising awareness for, is that you have to have some innate connection to it, that it really feels like it's an authentic connection. Because I think if you're doing it just to jump on the bandwagon with everybody else, the vibration really is about, lifting up that vibration, then it's not really in alignment with who you are. You'll find it to be more of a struggle. So immediately it's, what do you connect to? What do you want to see change? It could be anything from your child having autism, or knowing your neighbor who has a child that has autism. And so you want to be involved in that. Everybody has a gift, I believe, to make a change in the world. No matter how small it may feel to you, it's something that will change. It's a ripple effect. And people have come to me because I've done a couple of shows with my photography from the reservation, the pictures that I took, and all the photos. The names of the photos are dates where things have happened to these people. So it was kind of more of a history lesson. I want people to be educated. And a lot of people in the gallery show at the Leica show back in May were just astounded at the numbers of, natives that were killed, or the kids that are on meth, or the women that go missing. And I had all these different images, even down to the buffalo, which were their main source of food and shelter and medicine, were killed by the genocide of the buffalo. They were killed by the European settlers so that they could have control over these people because they couldn't eat. Just having that history and that understanding, people just did not know. So in a small way, the 400 people that came to that show who got to read something took that away with them. And I know they took that vibration out into the world and want to do something about it, or at least be more aware of where their energies lie. So they would then post something the next day. Because people asked me, I don't have any money. What can I do? And I said, you can join the conversation. Pick your, the charity, the organization, the awareness that you want to help that voice get out into the world, and join that conversation. I said, you can jump onto my Women of the White Buffalo Facebook page, or you can jump onto the Instagram page and follow, share. You don't have to have money, but, join the conversation. And the more people that join the conversation, the more light will be shed on, and things will make, change. Things will change. Things will change in the world. I didn't set out to go and make this film thinking I was going to come back and change the world. Yet I went out, and the stories that I heard and the feedback that I've gotten from the few that have seen this film have said, this is a part of the change in the world. There's my gift. I just spent a year on this subject and this project. And so Leica, who's my executive producer, Leica Singh, who's done incredible work making her own films, producing films, directing. She's an artist in her own right, philanthropic on many levels, an amazing woman. She saw the little film I did with Eve Ensler and called me a year ago and said, what are you doing right now? This film is incredible. It's just 5 minutes long. And I said, actually, I have this idea of going to the reservation and shooting these women and doing something for this Leica photography show, but I think I'm actually going to make a documentary. And she supported me immediately. She said, these stories need to be heard. And she gifted me the funding to start the journey. And she said, you will not get one person investing in this. You will have people donating to this, because there is no more time for investing in poverty, in these people who are dying, who have given their lives, the genocide of these people. You don't need anyone to invest in these people. We want donations. And so the whole entire project for the past year has been made purely from donations of people who could and want to see a difference in the world, and were able to help financially. But ultimately, because my heart was in the right place, and because I felt like I was on the right boat, going in the right direction, it all came to me in a flow, because it's the right thing. It's like my heart was there, and it's changed my life irrevocably. So anybody that has an idea, I do believe it could be done, because literally Leica called me 2 weeks before the date that I had decided I would leave to go to the reservation, already having spoken to an elder who had already said, we were waiting for you, and basically invited me onto the reservation. I didn't have a penny. I had no idea how I was going to get there. And then I get this phone call. And then, of course, it became...
I just got the shivers again. It truly is when you put one foot in front of the other and take that inspired action, and I call it active faith, and just trust the internal guidance you're having. The universe literally opens the doors, it rises up to meet you, and that's when things can come in. You were open, your heart was in it, and you had the energy of having this great intention to help these people. And that it's just, when you're coming from that energetically pure place, it moves even faster.
Agreed. I kept saying, like, I did it in stages throughout the year. So raising a bit of money to get me over that next hump and raising a bit more to get over the next hump. And I kept saying, I haven't come this far to come this far. And don't get me wrong, I have had a very privileged life. For some reason, I was born into this experience. And it doesn't mean that I'm the one going over there to capture those people. I am of those people. My ancestors were slaves. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were alcoholics. We've had abuse in my family. I understand these stories. I went to boarding school in England, and these women in South Dakota that I spoke to who'd gone to the boarding schools where they were ripped away from their families 150 years ago, up until there are still people, there's still a generation, the last generation is still alive, that went to the boarding schools, that the non-Indigenous peoples, the settlers, the missionaries, the church created these boarding schools and took these children away from their parents, cut their hair off, took away their traditional clothing, and had them learn the way of God and punish them if they spoke their language. And the genocide just there that happened because of these killing of the culture, my little teeny experience in this lifetime, that's my ancestral understanding. My great-great-great-grandmothers were taken from West Africa over to the Caribbean islands by the Dutch. So it's in our blood. I'm a woman of color. I'm Scottish, Irish, West Indian, and African. And when I went to the reservation, they looked at me and they looked at me and said, what nation, what tribe are you from? And then I'd open my mouth and I had this British accent and they were completely confused. I said, don't worry, I'm confused as well. I said, I grew up in the West Indies, and that's, I have a lot of that understanding in my bloodline. And just energetically, that's where Columbus first arrived. And so they would say to me, oh, you're an original Indian. I hate to say, if I'd have walked in as a white woman with blonde hair, I don't think I would have captured this film the same way, or the stories would have been told to me the same way. But for some reason, this was my calling. I've been working very hard toward this. I've learned so much about who I am in the process. And I think that's the other thing. When you jump into wanting to support or create awareness around something where there is injustice, you have to understand it at a really deep root level. And in the past year and a half, books can only tell you so much. I've watched documentaries, I've watched films. Being with them and sitting with them and speaking with them, I would look into their eyes and I would go back thousands of years. Something would happen in the room. When they spoke in their language, I understood the vibration of the language in their prayer, in their ceremony song. I would shut my eyes. I would be inside a teepee with a fire. And, I was taken into council with the elders. They asked me, why did I come? And 100 years ago, I would have been taken. They would have been wearing their regalia with the feathers and whatnot. And I would have been, the traveler, the Euro traveler. It was the same kind of feeling. Really, I felt like I was transported, and I just couldn't stop crying because I felt so humbled, so grateful, but yet so humbled at the opportunity to be of service.
That's so beautiful. And yeah, you truly were meant for this project. If you look back to everything you've been through, as you talk about your own personal history. And speaking of, kind of things being in your blood, I can just kind of hear some people thinking like, okay, one of the issues I find with a lot of people that have something to put out into the world is they are actually fearful of the spotlight, or they think that if they are maybe a more spiritually aligned person or inspired person, that it's too egoic to do something to promote themselves by doing press or really putting things out on social media. And they might be listening thinking, well, she's got rock star in her blood, so of course this is natural for her and easy for her. But maybe for someone, that doesn't have a history of being in the spotlight or growing up around that, what sort of advice would you give to them if they're feeling a little blocked with being able to put themselves out there into the spotlight?
The thing that I keep going back to is being rooted. And I feel like a lot of the teachers that are out there that are teaching about spirituality or trying to be on a platform in that area have so many problems in their lives. And they're not in that pure state of consciousness yet. So I don't know, maybe I'm being judgmental. It just irritates me that a lot of people now, they take a yoga class, teacher training course, and then suddenly they're a yoga teacher. So I always say, when I look at these people that come and talk about wanting to be a teacher and wanting to be out there, is like you have to root yourself and do the work so that you are really coming from the pure conduit of spirit rather than the ego of wanting to be seen and be out there and calling yourself a teacher. It goes beyond that, and then it becomes a natural flow, because it's like you stand, like, again, I go back to this journey. I keep hearing spirit telling me just to move out of the way, move out of the way, move your ego out of the way, and just stand there and be in your pure heart and come from that pure place of insight rather than headspace. So it's always to go back to your roots and to really listen to your spirit and to really listen to your heart in these moments. And so if you're standing in front of an audience, I always say, prior to going out, because I've obviously been talking about this project, and of course I've done other things, and I have been a performer, and I did sing and this and that, but there's that thing now, this voice, this understanding, this teaching, this story that needs to be shared is not mine in its totality. There are elements of it that are totally mine because we are all connected and the healing needs to take place. However, I ask for spirit, I ask the great God, whatever we want to call it, the great mystery as the native people call it, to work through us so we move out of the way of the ego and the fear-based and allow, you do a meditation before you go out there. Every time, like even before I spoke with you, I centered myself, I lit some sage, I just put myself in that space of being in alignment with my truth. And I think anybody that wants to go out and share that truth has to be in alignment with their truth.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the first things we talk about when, people work with me and getting into the spotlight is we start from a place that we address mindset and spiritual alignment. And that's for anything in life. It's not just that's for business, but it's really something every day, every moment of your life, you want to be checking in. And I do feel that when you're in that pure state, when you're connected to source, when you're in a state of love, things naturally unfold. You trust and follow that internal guidance. And for most people, they realize that, when they're really in their true why, like living their purpose, that is when things start to really flow, and it's exactly where you are. And then the fears kind of dissipate because you're in so much more of that energy of being on a mission and having a purpose and helping people and serving others. And then when you do get awareness on, something goes viral from your Instagram or on Facebook, that this is helping people. This is not about you and being famous. This is about fulfilling your legacy and fulfilling a greater purpose bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
So we have talked a little bit about how people can actually help or get involved, either by going to your social media and, commenting or sharing. And what if they wanted to do more? What could they do? Or can they see the film soon? Do we know sort of what's coming up?
My prayer is that through this conversation of, the film, The Women of the White Buffalo, people will start to do some excavation of themselves and turn inwards, turn the light inwards, and they'll be surprised at what they can find. And that's how things change, for the better, of course.
Absolutely. And it's really about just getting in touch. And I know you have your website where people can reach you. That's womenofthewhitebuffalo.com, correct?
Yes.
And you're also on Facebook. That's Women of the White Buffalo. They could search, or you can use the at Women White Buffalo, tag there on Facebook. I know you have your Instagram, which is also Women White Buffalo. And for anybody that wants to reach out to Deborah, if you're feeling moved by anything she's said today, please just go to the site, see what ways you can support the project and help get the word out. And is there anything else that you would ask of people that are listening today that, might help the project?
You did ask, exactly. You asked about how you can help. On womenofthewhitebuffalo.com, there is a PayPal button for donations. The money thus far that has been raised outside of the making of the film goes back to the people that I have met on the reservation that I know are doing amazing things, whether it's Mothers Against Meth, where this woman is housing all these young children whose parents are on meth, and some of these kids are on meth. She's trying to help them because there is no rehabilitation center on the reservation. So that money goes back to them straight away. This isn't about profit. This is about awareness, awakening, and support. And ultimately, when the film is distributed and it is out there, it will have the Women of the White Buffalo as a place to go. And on the website will be other partnerships with other organizations that will help support the healing of these communities and building of the community so that they have the support and, most importantly, the necessity of support through a rehabilitation center, a center for women who are being raped, that have somewhere to go, that they can be taken care of, that, they can actually leave the abusive situation. And it's all done the right way. So it's not a bunch of non-native people setting up a rehabilitation center. It's the natives with their culture and understanding having a rehabilitation center for themselves. They just need the support. They don't need this is how it should be done. They need the support. So financial support, of course, is so necessary so that they don't have to be reliant on the government for their handouts. So womenofthewhitebuffalo.com will house more information as to other organizations over the next coming months.
Beautiful. And your project, it so truly is a representative of what's happening out in the world now, a reflection, a mirror to sort of the shift I feel like our human consciousness is going through, our planetary sort of alignment. And it's just so wonderful to be able to talk to you about this and hear your insight into this whole other world that so many people know nothing about. And I just want to thank you for doing this, for creating this project, and for being so open and transparent about what's happening. I'm sure it's going to have incredible impact, and I just can't wait to see what that is. So thank you, Deborah.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the time. And I think the end of all of this, when one stands there and goes, oh, I have an idea, you have to look at yourself and go, do I have a choice? And I realized with this project and sort of this new chapter in my life, I don't have a choice. So, I embrace that really with all my heart.
I love that. And there's so many of you out there there are things in your heart that you feel like you really need to get out there. So please take Deborah's story to inspire you, to motivate you, to give you some fuel to know that if there is something that's calling to you, that really is probably your true calling for the time on this planet right now. So thank you again, Deborah, so much for being here. And you truly are a world changer. And we're so honored to have spoken with you today. And we look forward to seeing all the wonderful things to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today for the Shine Strategy Podcast. I invite you to join me at shineinsiders.com for a free masterclass where you can get more inspiration and strategies to get visible and change the world. Your voice matters. Please subscribe, rate, and share this show so we can continue to grow on this journey together. Until the next one, it's Heather Burgett, your Shine Strategist, signing off.